Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the Digital Summer Forum 2022, and great thanks to Katerina and to Eduardo for guiding us through the day. You have become, as it was said already, in a way the faces of the Drucker Forum, combining kindness with wit and competence. So thank you very much for that. Now, the Digital Forum is a big step on the way to the in-person forum in November in the Vienna Hofburg. The two events share an overarching theme: performance that matters. In Drucker's days, performance was really economic performance. That was in the center. And Drucker emphasized himself that companies need to provide economic performance in order to devote resources to other things. That was the basis. Yet, Drucker also stressed that taking on responsibility for managing a business was a moral undertaking. Expanding profit margins and increasing shareholder value is certainly not a sufficient and sole raison d'être, giving the real impact that businesses have on their customers, workers, communities, and the environment. Doris Drucker, who was our friend and mentor when we launched the Drucker Forum, told me about the comment that Peter Drucker made in the last years of his life. By then, he was very famous, and he knew at the same time how quickly memory fades. He said, "In 2 years, after I'm gone, nobody will remember me anymore." That was his vision. I told Doris we would work hard to prevent this, because the world still has much to get and much to learn from Peter Drucker. And we especially need his wisdom now in a time of crisis and great confusion. We try to honor his spirit by taking a broad and deep perspective on the most pressing questions and issues of our time. And we try to avoid to sail on mainstream, which is not always popular, but this is what Drucker would also want us to do. The backdrop for this year's forum is the recent sequence of crises, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the Ukraine war. But there have already been issues on the way. It didn't just start with the crisis. But in some way, we managed over the last years to muddle through all the issues we had on our hands. But now we face the threat of a mega disruption. People often talk about this aftermath of a crisis where you settle into something that is called the new normal. But this seems to be bigger this time. It is like a new world order is emerging in front of our eyes. Geopolitical, social, and economic. And this is a huge thing. Some of the basic assumptions are being swept away. For example, on globalization, on inflation, on supply chains. Think about the global supply chain, what we are currently witnessing, on food or energy security, even in developed countries, healthcare, and on poverty, where we thought we are definitely on the way of reducing poverty worldwide. Drucker observed that we have made great gains in income and well-being in the last two centuries or so. And this was very much linked to the improving performance of organizations and institutions. These gains were achieved through growing capabilities of managers, entrepreneurs, and institutional leaders whose performance gains ultimately benefited society. We tend to forget that the good things we have, from schools to universities, research institutions, hospitals, and all the things that businesses provide to meet people's wants and needs result from ever-improving management practices, of course, practices that made it possible to transmit the value created by research and technology to people. We had many good years, ladies and gentlemen, after the Second World War, building societies that were successful by numerous measures, and especially in the West. This has led to complacency and some ideological arrogance. But as Andy Grove observed, complacency breeds failure. And he might also see now a time to inject a bit of concern and paranoia into our thinking. We cannot take things for granted anymore. Much of good management is about the right priorities. No longer can we treat the priorities of yesterday as the priorities of today. What we may have thought about energy, food, efficiency, inflation, climate, work, etc., will not necessarily be the same in the future. New ideas and new trade-offs may be required. One of the, under quote, advantages of the mega crisis that we are is that we may get more real in our perspective of what's really important for humans. This critical introspection is also required for the practice of management. And we must ask ourselves the question, how much of the management that was developed in the 20th century can still be maintained in the 21st century? And where do we have to make major changes? Jamie Dimon recently predicted that we may be in for a hurricane, but he warned we should not try to hunker down and sit out the crisis. We need to step up to the challenge. Progress will come from those who are ready to take on the challenges with their flesh and bones. The entrepreneurs, the innovators, managers, civil servants, who are all driven by a common purpose and by a sense of reality, not ideology, and feel the passion to build the future for the generations to come. This energy, ladies and gentlemen, we want to inspire at the Drucker Forum. Think about, and when we say, can we really make it work? Can we have an influence? I would suggest you think about a moment about the complexity theory, which teaches us about butterflies. A flap of a butterfly induce a current of air and lead ultimately into a storm and make a big change. And I think in this sense, we should look at our own moves. I wish us all a great conference and continuing deep and serious discussion on performance that matters for individuals, for the teams, for organizations, for ecosystems, and ultimately for societies. Thank you.